Curious to see how this is going to turn out. I'm surprised by it's using 32. What did I set? Oh, encoding's at 2700 with 45. Oh, that's pretty high. Testing, speech, and now music. Testing, speech, and now music. Okay, seems pretty good. Go ahead and get the stream and get back to it. Okay, so what we were thinking of doing was, I should get my OBS up. Sorry, my computer crashed and there's a bunch of issues, but this should mostly be good now. Okay, okay, I'm just back to where I was before. Anyway, so now we are looking to just put some kind of player controller capsule. So I pulled up an asset. I believe the last thing I did was check vehicles. So let's look in here for basically just some kind of prefab. So here's prefab. Drop it on. See what happens. So there's a controllable vehicle, and that went right off the end. So let's go ahead and put our main camera on it, because that's... So what we're going to do is I'm going to parent the main camera to the car. Let's see what happens when I do that. So as I drive forward and back, so it's doing a pretty good job of parenting. Now, what we want to do is I want to get right behind. So I'm going to see where the car is. This is where putting everything down at 0 helps. So car at 0, 0, 0, 0. Then I'm going to bring it up a little bit just so it doesn't fall off. Let's see if that's good. So just do 2 and 2. Then the camera. So in this case, what we're seeing is we're actually seeing its number. It's actually relative, so it's actually now -5 from where the car was. It is not -5 in world position. Now here's a case where I'm gonna just play around with it and say, oh, that looks about right. -8. Now if you see, it's immediately gone, so I just need to remember it. That's not too great. But as you can see, things are already coming along pretty good. That I have a pretty decent little car driving around. Now what I just did is I increased the scale by 5, and that's sometimes not the best idea, because what's going to end up happening is, you see the scale of this little prototype texture here? It got stretched out by 5 times, so now it's way bigger. Now that happens, I'm just going to say sure, same thing on these two. Alright, in fact, you know what? I'm going to only make them... Oh, actually, I'll leave it thick. Why not? Nice and chunky. Now I have to back it up, obviously, get it appropriate. And now they're both a little bit too big. But I can just do that. Eyeball them to 3.5. And just bump it over a little bit to get even. Sure. It's one of those places where these little prototyping. Actually, yeah, let's just go back. Let's just do it this way. So this is one of those cases where these using ProBuilder in this manner is useful, because what it's doing is it's helping us just align things really easily. So in this case, ProBuilder Core used to be called Prototype, and it was intended for this kind of work, which is called white boxing. It's where you lay out the level ahead of time before you, just to make sure that the game flow works before you actually make it pretty anyway. Alright, so just a little bit of things to help our lives out. Let's go ahead and add edges. So we could add walls with ProBuilder, but let's try using colliders instead. So I'm going to just create game objects, and I'm going to call it, So game object is nothing in and of itself. It's a placeholder. The only thing it actually has is a transform, and a transform means it has a location. Now in there you can add components such as a box collider. So a box collider is it's like it sounds, it's a box. So it's back at 0, 0, 0. I got myself offset by getting excited about stretching things out, but you can just see what I'm doing here is I'm going to make this thing pretty monstrous. Still not enough, so let's go ahead. So now, what this is, so that is a really, really big wall now. Now, let's see if it will actually work as a physics collider. Now, as you can see, we can see our scene view, and a lot of times you can put your scene view next to your game view, so you can see what's going on. Let's see if I just drive right through this. Nope. So it worked. So now to get walls around on all 4 sides, get this duplicate key. It's kind of, I think it's a Mac thing. So you can just Control-C, Control-V if you want. Now, it might look like I'm moving it, but what just happened is there's multiple of them, and they only will show you one at a time. So let's go ahead. Lined up. There's another one. Now what we're going to do here is we're just going to rotate it by 90 degrees. Push it back. No, honestly, as silly as it sounds, sometimes what's a good idea to do is to just grab a like a sheet of graph paper, just so that you can get these numbers down, because you'll find later at some point you're going to need to know where things are supposed to be, like to test if you know, a player has, I don't know, you know, like one example would be if a player scored, or if a player has, you know, done something horrible, and you know, if players are outside the world bounds, or where you want the spawn spots to be. I'm just checking collision real quick. Just make sure there's no super obvious leaks. Looks like all 4 walls work. Okay, so we have a car driving around a silly space. Let's go ahead and throw on the ball. Just why not? In this case, I'm going to add just a sphere. There's actually a really nice looking roller thing in Unity, but I'm not going to try to do that right now. So, you know, sometimes, this is another weird thing, is Unity will sometimes try to help you out by spawning things where it thinks you were looking, or things where you want them. So in that case, it thought I wanted it like negative 80,000. So here is now a mesh. Now, it is just a mesh, so it is not a physics object, it doesn't have a collider. Actually, let me see, it might have a collider. Yeah, so it is a collider, so you can't drive through it, but it doesn't have a rigid body, which is what allows us to have physical interactions. So now it does. That also means it is now impacted by gravity. Okay, I just scored the first goal. That was really silly. So let's go ahead and scale this thing up. Starting to look slightly more Rocket League sized. Now, let's see. One thing I need to do is I need to change the collider on my car to be more... I'm guessing it's actually... Well, let's just see. Components, headlights... So the car itself is just a transform... Oh no, here's the colliders. Okay, so those aren't actually too bad. Let's go ahead and take this collider bottom, and I am just going to try to bring it in a little bit on the front so that it is more likely to deal with the collider front, which is this angled one. Actually, let's bring that a little bit forward. It's still not far enough. Just made it a little bit smaller. Okay, now that might not seem too obvious, but right when I touched it, it actually popped up in the air a little bit. Another thing to do is you could make it that when the car is going forward, it would dip the front down a little bit, and that would just help create the kind of pop, I guess, we're you kind of expect to see coming from the ball. Another thing to do is bring down its mass a little bit. Let's just see what that does. It's a little easier to move around. I'm trying to remember, sometimes it might only have been Unity that had the concept of that might have only been Unity that had the concept of so what was that? It might have only been Unity that had the concept of physics, like physics textures, such that you could have like rubber, you could have different kinds of interactions. But it doesn't matter. Don't worry about it at this moment. Let's see if I can get something more interesting on it. So this is the car wheel, but now at least it looks like something. So now this is an issue. Yeah, so when I messed with the colliders on the car, it had a somewhat negative effect that it now makes this one hit first, which is what I wanted for the pop-up, but in doing so, that makes me stick a lot more onto the walls. Anyway, just go ahead and put this back. Hopefully I can not get so badly stuck on walls. Yeah, kinda do. It's because I've got this point on the front. I kinda need to make it more of a like a diamond or something. If I want to make it more, I guess, fun. Let me see. I can tell you right now, well, almost certainly what you're not going to want is you're not going to want a mesh collider, and a mesh collider would actually collide as the vehicle exists. It would tend to get these weird things where things get stuck between like the wheel and the body. It seems like it's a good idea until you try it once, and then you find out that that it doesn't actually tend to act the way you think it would until you actually sit there and just actually look at it with all the colliders. So I'm actually going to grab a sphere collider and try doing this a little bit just to. This might make things a little more interesting. Just try making it. Oh, it's a sphere. So maybe delete that. Let's try a capsule collider. Gives a little bit more of an interesting collision shape on the front. Let's just see. Oh. So the problem was the collider was actually impacting with the ground. So you gotta be real careful about that. That is doing a little bit of a better job of kind of causing things to pop up a little bit. Go ahead and get rid of my hard corners. So I have this carved bottom. Let me just go ahead and get rid of that. So you can really easily disable colliders. Yeah, I kind of need to be able to like rub on things a little bit nicer. Well, that's certainly a problem. You know what? Let's go ahead and try getting rid of my collider. Let's go ahead and bring in the mesh renderers. So this wasn't something I did, but obviously this is something that this is something that Unity did for these examples to help kind of show how the colliders are actually working. Alright, so so the colliders aren't necessarily working that great with the edges, but it doesn't matter. Let's go ahead and try to actually make this a little bit more fun to drive. One thing. So car. Make this a little bit more floaty, maybe a little bit faster. Oh, let's feel stuff. Just making it a little bit more powerful and kind of floaty. Let's see, floatier. So this will make it bounce things a little bit harder, and it'll so by increasing the mass, it made it accelerate a lot slower, which is kind of causing some of my problems. I wonder what's causing my frame chunkiness. Let's see, I do not have desync on. You know what? Just get rid of the wheel effects real quick. Okay, apparently without wheel effects you can't drive. Real quick before we continue, I'm going to go ahead and drop this into source control. I'm going to switch back to this real quick. So I personally use Source Tree and Bitbucket. So a lot of people use GitHub. Nothing wrong with GitHub. I personally like Bitbucket because you can have private repos for free. So on GitHub, there's no free private code repositories. So if you want to do something, basically everybody has to see it. Oh, Bitbucket. Account has been deactivated. That would be really bad. Sorry about this, guys. Or anyone who's watching it. If anyone does watch it. Alright, so what I am doing is I am going to make a new repository. I'm just going to call it Rocket. Create repository. I'm saying this is a private. Depending upon how this series goes, this might be just a normal thing. So I'm going to go ahead and close my Unity real quick. I'm going to get into my documents. Really quickly made a just a Control-C, Control-V of my project, and that was because I'm now going to clone. Sorry about this. I'm now going to clone down from Bitbucket onto my machine. And it just happened that I'd already named it in the folder that I wanted it to be, so that was a bad idea. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and put it in the same place, and then we'll put everything back. Now, while I'm at it, real quick, I'm gonna grab. Just a real quick git ignore, and I'm actually gonna bring that up, show it on the stream. That's alright. Bring back OBS. So this is the gitignore that I dropped into the folder. And so now I'm going to show the folder real quick. So now I've got this gitignore. Here is the base of the project. And then, so the point of it is I'm now going to have a folder called build, and in here these will be the actual times that I'm making a build for distribution, like WebGL or the EXE or the Android APK. You don't generally want to push those up to source, except sometimes if you make like a real release, you might want to do that, but in general you just want to go back to the original source, use the same tools, and generate the same output. So these things aren't, this is actually not part of your source code necessarily. They get created in part of the process. The same thing with this library temp. So these things actually, that's a quick trick, is if your Unity stops working and nothing's changed, but it's just throwing weird errors, besides just reverting your source control, you can sometimes just delete the library, reopen the, close the project, delete the library, reopen the project, and it'll regenerate the library. And those are just kind of temporary things that Unity is using. But this is a generic gitignore that I think it's just if you just go into GitHub and look for gitignore for Unity 3. Not actually, you could just type that by hand. If you're watching this, you can just pause it. So anyway, now what I'm going to do is, this is source tree. I've got my project. I'm now actually going to, so you stage all of these things, and then I'm going to, go ahead and push these up to Bitbucket. And got pretty fast internet, but usually it's, Unity stuff's pretty small, and if you're doing your own stuff, until you start getting into actual modeling and whatnot, we're talking megabytes usually. So it goes pretty fast. So that was the first commit. That's actually the one that'll probably take you the longest. So then it's now in source control, which has a whole lot of benefits. The main one being if something was working better before and it's not working so great anymore, you can just revert back, and you will find that incredibly useful. It's most commonly thought of as being used, you want to use it for multiple people, but even just for yourself, just being able to have known good, something that was working, and then when it stops working, you can go back, or you can actually look at the differences and see what you did to break it. So anyway, it's incredibly important. Probably the most important thing to do in a programming project is to have good source control. I personally suggest doing it in the cloud, just because computers crash, hard drives crash. There hasn't been a major cloud source control provider that's gone out of business yet. But using a Git repository with Dropbox or Spider Oak or OneDrive would also work, and that would keep it completely. You could do it completely yourself, but go look up a source control tutorial if you need some help. Anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and reopen. Unity. This, by the way, is the soundtrack for Dungeon of the Endless, which I really like the soundtrack. Not not that much of a fan of the game, but the soundtrack is great. It's kind of moody. Alright, so we've got a sphere, and we've got our hard edge right there, which is what's causing us to do this weird little dip. Oh yeah, first let's go back in the car and let's undo the... By the way, the reason I felt like right now is time to source controller was as soon as I got rid of the wheel effects, that's when the car wouldn't drive anymore, which seemed a super weird thing. It was just, well, okay. If Unity has really done some weird stuff with this example, I need to be really careful and get into source control. So let's go back to the car. Let's undo this mass because they're using physics to push the car, which means the mass is determining what is, I cannot figure out what's causing that frame rate to drop. I have a feeling it's those particles coming off the wheel effects. So what I just did is I took the wheel effects off of the wheel. Yeah, that was most definitely it. I mean, I'm having some drops, but that was nuts. What was going on before? So what I did was I just disabled the wheel, disabled the particles, and then applied that back to the prefab. So that just means get rid of the skidding noise. That just means that it's not enabled, and when you apply it back to the prefab, it actually was applying it to all 4 tires. So yeah, my frame rate's doing way better. And this is a really powerful computer, so it's super odd. And well, I'm going through the floor. There's a couple ways you could deal with that. I'm not going to worry about it because this edge isn't very. These edges over here aren't very fun anyway. You know, because of the way I'm sticking into it, because this flat front right here. So I'm not too worried about it yet. So we've got some other issues first. So let's see. The main things we need to do is we need to get jumping working. We need to get boosting working, and obviously, you know, an opponent or something. But let's go ahead and try to figure out. I don't like these. Using looking through the it's all just renders. Huge fan of these colliding noises. Oh, that got turned off. Okay, so that was why we were acting funny. I'm gonna try that again real quick. Yeah, okay, so we lost the bottom white box there. And in doing so, it was letting, it just had the front and the top and that was making it that, you know, how we fell down that little seam, basically. Okay, thought I got that figured out. I'm just going to go ahead and commit this in real quick. And you don't even... Just adding a commit message to the bottom collider was off. Honestly, when you're working with yourself, it's really not that big of a deal to even always leave a very detailed commit message, because I just want to commit early, commit often. Well, it's not doing too bad. I'm trying to think of... It's kind of bouncing, it's kind of hitting the back wall and sticking, and we would kind of hope that it would, like, bounce out a little bit. Oh. Forget what kinematic does off the top of my head. Well, that certainly made it not work. With, certainly not work the way we thought of. So, yeah, I've figured out why. Alright, well, okay, go ahead. Oh, anyway, thanks for